We have been going through the book of Daniel. We finished the first chapter yesterday, following the theme of spiritual living in a secular world. We looked at how Daniel and his friends were able to achieve a position of promotion and high honor by being obedient to God and doing their job well. Yesterday ended with a success story, how they had survived a difficult training program. But today we find that they encounter a crisis. Sooner or later, crises do come. It's not always going to be success after success after success, blessing after blessing. Actually, in the Bible, even our crises are blessings, but God's blessings sometimes come in difficult ways. And that's what we find here. They are facing, Daniel and his friends are facing a huge crisis in the second chapter. Well, the second chapter tells us that the king Nebuchadnezzar had dreams, and his spirit was troubled, and his sleep left him. So this powerful king is having a dream, and so he's unable to, he's worried about the dreams, because those days they always felt that dreams communicated some message. It was like an omen of something that's going to happen. And so he called the magicians and the enchanters and the sorcerers and asked them, tell me what this dream is all about. It's a very unreasonable request, actually. He says in verse 3, I had a dream, and my spirit is troubled to know the dream. So the king, the people say, well, O king, live forever. Tell your servants the dream, and we will show the interpretation. Now, that's a very reasonable request. Tell us the dream, and we will show this interpretation. But his response is most surprising. And the king answered and said to the Chaldeans, the word from me is firm. If you do not make known to me the dream and its interpretation, you shall be torn limb from limb, and your houses shall be laid in ruins. So they have to tell the king the dream that he saw. Now, we don't know whether he had forgotten it or whether he was trying to test these people. We are not sure of that. Verse 9 suggests maybe he did know the dream, but he was trying to test these people. Whatever it is, he said, you have to tell me what this dream is. And then verse 10 and 11 tells us that the people say, there is not a man on earth who can meet the king's demand. For no great and powerful king has asked such a thing of any magician or enchanter. The thing the king asks is difficult, they say, and no one can show it to the king except the gods, whose dwelling is not with the flesh. So they say, king, you tell us what the dream is, and we'll explain. But we can't tell what it is until we know what the dream is. And then verse 12 tells us, because of this the king was very angry and very furious, and commanded that all the wise men of Babylon be destroyed. And so an extreme reaction from the king. He wants all his wise men to be killed because they couldn't tell what his dream was and what the explanation of it. Now, why such an extreme reaction? Such a powerful person who seems as if nothing in this world could take away his security, absolute monarch, a ruler, and suddenly there was something that he couldn't control, a dream. And in that situation, he gets rattled and he behaves in an irrational way. If you get your security from this earth, you're getting security from a very insecure source. sooner or later you may be disappointed, and there may be something that you can't control, and then you lose control of yourself because you can't control this. We've seen this in the history of politics, where good political leaders who were doing a good job, when they found that their power was being questioned, under threat, they became tyrants. They wanted to control, and then what happens is they lose control of themselves in trying to control a situation. You see this with a mother whose son was a very obedient son. She liked the son, cared a lot for the son, and usually the son consulted the mother before making a decision. Now the son has made a decision, maybe to take a new job or to marry somebody, without consulting his mother. Now the decision may be a good decision, but the mother is upset and reacts very negatively because she wanted to control her son. Or you find a boy whose girlfriend says, "I don't love you anymore, I don't think we can continue this relationship," and the boy says, "I'm going to commit suicide if you leave me," because he had found too much security, too much of his identity and significance came from this relationship, and when the relationship was broken, he fell to pieces. Or a business executive who has been overlooked for a promotion becomes angry and begins to act irrationally because he was overlooked. Or a girl, somebody says you have put on weight, and she gets totally upset, stands for 3 hours in front of the mirror. Have I really put on weight? Do I look fat? You know, this is what happens when problems come to our lives and we are unable to control a situation. And that will happen to all of us. Jesus said this. Jesus promised that in this world you will have tribulation. He told that to his disciples. In fact, if we just promise people blessing, 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 prosperity all the time, and say, "Oh, no problem will come to you," we are being unfair and unbiblical. The Bible says that God calls us to a cross, and Jesus promised that in this world you have tribulation. He also said, "But don't be afraid, I have overcome the world." But the tribulation will come. Well, the king couldn't handle this situation. There was a situation that he couldn't control, and he lost control of himself. Daniel, his reaction is very different to this one. So we are told that the decree went out, and the wise men were about to be killed, and they sought Daniel and his companions to kill them. So because Daniel was now one of the advisors of the king, he and his friends are also going to be killed. Well, we are told that when Daniel replied, verse 14, then Daniel replied with prudence and discretion, or with wisdom and tact, as another translation puts it, to Arioch, the captain of the king's guard, who had gone out to kill the wise men of Babylon. He is the one, Daniel is the one who really had something to panic about, because somebody comes to say, "Well, you are going to be killed, come get ready for your death." And instead of panicking, we are told that he acted with prudence and discretion, with wisdom and tact under pressure. He didn't lose control. In fact, verses 15 and 16 says that he was able to get an audience with the king and to tell the king, "Give me a day, I will find the answer to your problem." Now that's an amazing feat in those days, because kings were absolute monarchs and you couldn't just go and have an appointment with the king. But he used his wisdom and his tact, and he was able to come and meet the king and get time to make his decision. How was Daniel able to act like this? Now, I'm not saying that every Christian acts so calmly when they have a difficulty. We are human, and our human reaction may be one of fear, of panic, of questioning. However, sooner or later we realize that God is sovereign. And when we realize that, the panic goes. The Bible says in all things God works for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purposes. And if we know that God is going to work for the good, then we don't panic. We look at the situation constructively. We act with wisdom and tact. So sooner or later, a real Christian will come to understand God is sovereign over this situation also. I do not need to panic. And that's what happened with Daniel. You know, there's a story of a person, a businessman who lost his whole business in a fire, in the Great Chicago Fire many years ago. And then, you know, to get over from this fire, they decided to go on a holiday from America to UK. And he sent his family and his children, and his wife went ahead, and he was going to follow a little later. Sadly, for Horatio Spafford, the ship that his wife was traveling on got caught in a storm, and they were shipwrecked. And his wife was saved, but the 4 children died. And he was devastated, as you can imagine. But he went through this crisis with God. His business is gone, his children are gone. And some years after this tragedy, he wrote a hymn. It says, "When peace like a river attendeth my way, when troubles like sea billows roll," you know, like the waves when troubles come, "whatever my lot, you have taught me to say, it is well with my soul." Whatever my lot, whatever happens to me, I know that God is with me, so I can say, it is well, it is well. So, we have this situation where he's told and he reacts with wisdom and tact. You know, there are some people who ruin their future by an unwise reaction to a problem. The Bible says in Proverbs 19 and verse 2, "It is not good to have zeal without knowledge, nor to be hasty and miss the way." You can have zeal, but have zeal with knowledge. Be wise. For example, you receive a letter of criticism or reproof from somebody. You can overreact and publicly show anger. And what happens is that you can ruin your job, your reputation, by the public response to this letter of criticism. Sometimes the best thing to do is to ignore a letter like that. So, we need to be wise. And you know, one of the best ways to be wise is to have friends who will help us to be wise. And that's what happens with Daniel. Verse 17 of chapter 2. They have been now he had got this time from the king, which helps him to make to find out from God what this dream is. And then we are told, verse 17, "And Daniel went to his house and made the matter known to Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah, his companions." So he immediately went to his friends. Now I want to say that if you are going to be in the world and be involved in society, remember you need friends. It's difficult. There are complex decisions to make. There are challenges. There is wisdom that is needed often. And we need friends who will help us to make those decisions. So, if you want to be a Christian in society, living out his principles when others are not, find some people who love God and have them as your friends. You know, much of the Christian passages on the growth of the Christian life is in the plural. Now in English, you can be plural or singular. And when the Bible says you and things like that, you think sometimes it's you, it's for you as a person. But most of these growth passages in the Bible are in the plural. So we grow with others, together with others. I have talked several times in this series on William Wilberforce, the person who became an MP and who fought against slavery and won after a long bruising battle. He won to a repeal of slavery in the British Empire. William Wilberforce had a group of friends. They were called the Clapham sect. They would meet in the morning to pray. They helped him, and they are the ones who gave him the support that he needed for this long bruising battle. There was one person who would do the research for him so that he could speak in Parliament about this. There were people who would send messages asking for prayer before a key debate in Parliament. So he had this group of fellow Christians whom he could go back to and who helped him in the challenging task of doing this, of being a Christian in the political world. So let me tell you some reasons why friends are so helpful to us. Firstly, friends help us respond wisely when we are attacked. You know, sometimes when we are attacked, we tend to act according to our emotions. And sometimes it's usually when a person acts like that under attack according to their emotions, it's an unwise reaction. I have found sometimes when I'm criticized or attacked by somebody, I want to write and respond. And very often my friends say, don't write. And even sometimes I write something and they censor, my friends censor what I have written. Because they say, oh, you say this is how they'll understand it. And I say, no, that's not what I mean. Yeah, they say, that may be not what you mean, but that's the way they will understand it. So our friends help us to be wise when we respond under pressure. Proverbs 12:15 says, a way of a fool seems right to him, but a wise man listens to advice. So our friends help us to act responsibly. Then our friends show us when we are getting out of line. You know, it's so easy to compromise your principles when everybody else is compromising principles. It's very easy for us also to do the same thing. And so our friends can help us to stay clear from that. For example, everybody is lying to sell their products, and you're not selling your products. And everybody says, if you tell this lie, you can sell it. But he says, no, I'm a Christian. And then he comes and tells his friends, and his friends give him the strength. No, you stay. God will look after you. Don't lie. Or sometimes you want to take revenge. And very often revenge is camouflaged under the word justice. Okay, you say you're fighting for justice, but actually you're taking revenge. And you may be deceived yourselves and think that you're fighting for justice when others see that you're really taking revenge. We may not see it because we are so emotionally involved. Our friends help us to steer clear of that, because revenge is not an option for a Christian. Or you know, sometimes it's a relationship with somebody of the opposite sex. It may be in your workplace. And you know, most people who go into illicit affairs never go into the affair saying, I'm going to have an affair. What happens is that you start talking and you say, oh, she's only a friend, or he's only a friend, and you just start talking, and then what happens is you don't realize. And because it started so nicely, you still think it's such a nice thing. Others see. They see the way their eyes meet. They see the way you all vacillate towards each other all the time. And they warn you. So our friends show us when we are getting out of line. We need to have friends who will tell us these things. Then friends help us to keep our priorities when we are striving for success. When you're striving in the business world, and it's very difficult to do this, you realize that you can neglect your fellowship, you can neglect giving to God's work because you're struggling to survive financially. You can give up your time with the Lord because you have so much work to do. You can begin to neglect your family, trying to pursue your business. So our friends can help us. In Hebrews 10, 24 and 25, it says, "Consider how to spur one another on to love and good deeds." Our friends spur us on to help us to persevere without giving up our priorities. And then our friends can help us persevere in a chosen calling when we encounter obstacles. You know you have to do this, but it's very difficult. It's a difficult road. And your friends help us. I decided to join the Christian ministry when I was 14 years old. And I told my parents when I was about 15 or 16. And my parents told me, okay, you want to be in Christian work, good, but you first study, go to university, and then you better decide. After university, if you want to decide, then you can do it. So I decided to sit for my A-levels. And I was doing biological science, and I was, my heart was here, but I had to study, and it was very difficult. I wanted to give up often. But I had another friend who also wanted to join the ministry, and the two of us were both doing our A-levels. And so a few days I would go to his home and study, and some days he would come to my home and study. And as we studied together, we encouraged each other. When he wants to give up, I scold him. When I want to give up, he scolds me. And together we somehow pulled along and managed to get through our A-levels. So our friends help us to persevere in our chosen task. So I want to challenge you, if you want to be a Christian in a secular world that doesn't acknowledge the principles that you have, find a group. Don't say, I don't have anyone. Find somebody. And if you can't find someone, make a friend. That's what somebody told John Wesley when he was a young Christian. He said, "Sir, do you want to serve God and go to heaven? Remember, you can't do it alone. So find friends or make friends." And then he says, that person said, the Bible knows nothing of solitary religion. So when you go into the world, remember, it's going to be difficult, you're going to get hurt, and very often you will expect a lot from people and they may fail you. That's okay. Our friends may fail us, but remember, we need friends, and you expect a lot from your friends and they may not live up to the expectations, but we need friends and they will help you. So today we looked at a few principles of going into the world. Problems are going to come, but we know that God is with us, so we can act with wisdom and tact, because we believe that God is with us. And then not only do we believe in God, we have friends to help us. So let me close this talk by challenging you. Find a friend. Find a friend or a group of friends who will help you in your walk with God.